years. What I found really interesting is that I happen to have more listeners in Taiwan, and some of my own blogs or my online comments and things have been seem to be widely received in Taiwan. So thank you very much for having me. So I understand that this presentation is going to be part of the Spotlight on Taiwan, right? Of course, it's related to Taiwan. Taiwan is part of the story here, definitely, but it will probably be larger than Taiwan and related to other parts of East and Southeast Asia as well in the Milk Tea Alliance. But anyhow, thank you very much once again for having me, and yeah, it's always a pleasure. So today I'm going to talk about the Milk Tea Alliance as the last wave of decolonization. So I think my podcast with Duncan is related to this slide in that in the past decade, I think there has been a lot of new publications coming out on this China rising situation, 21st century being the China century, and PRC is taking over, has taken over Japan as the second largest economy in the world, and some people say it's going to take over, surpass the US in 10 years or something. So there's all these publications coming out about the emergence of China as a world superpower in the 21st century, and its rising influence in the Far East, especially in Southeast Asia. And of course, there were these two books that came out, and I read and reviewed them. And they're both about China expanding into Southeast Asia and how Southeast Asia is responding to that. So within that context, right, within that context of the PRC's rising influence in East and Southeast Asia, there are 4 issues that we will be sort of touching on today, 4 issues that I see as the main components of this Milk Tea Alliance that at the beginning might not seem like the same story at all. And these 4 issues are, first of all, is Taiwan independence, this other idea aside from the one China policy, right? That the idea that Taiwan could be its own independent entity, and it's not part of the PRC, and this has become a big deal in the international arena over the past few years. It's been a big deal all along since the 1970s when the PRC replaced Taiwan in the UN, but recently there have been more voices from around the world suggesting that it's nonsense to insist that that Taiwan is part of China. So this has been going on for a long time already. And then you have the issue of Hong Kong being handed over to China, PRC, in 1997, and this idea that there's one country, 2 systems in Hong Kong. But then in the recent year that you see more and more expansion of Beijing influence into Hong Kong and infringements on civil liberties and such in Hong Kong, and demonstrations and everything that has happened recently, and this issue of whether or not Hong Kong should have special rights and liberties vis-a-vis Chinese people on the mainland. This has also been an issue that has been in the news lately. But before, I would say in the 2000s, before we get into the 20-teens, people did not necessarily see the struggle in Hong Kong for liberty and freedom and democracy as being the same issue as Taiwan independence. They seem to be not the same story. And then you have the story of Thailand's struggle towards democratization, which of course seems like a completely different story from Taiwan and Hong Kong, right? This is in Southeast Asia. This is not a within the Chinese cultural nexus per se. And Thailand was supposedly never colonized during the colonial period, right? So people don't see this as the same situation at all. And Thailand, but Thailand's story is strange. Thailand is one of the countries in East and Southeast Asia that experienced this period of democratization in the 90s and early 2000s. You have a time, you know, in the 90s, you have this wave of democratization from South Korea to Taiwan, the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, going through this period of democratization. But Thailand is a special case in which it actually managed to de-democratize. So we return to military coups, and we return to this like dictatorship state in the 20-teens, and up till today. Of course, you have a prime minister that came after an election, but he sort of picked out the 250 senators to vote for him to become the prime minister without having to be elected. So that's the situation in Thailand, and it's viewed, I think generally it's viewed that this is a problem with the Thai military and the so-called constitutional monarchy that has become very much involved in politics in the past, I would say, throughout the Cold War era. And so it's seen as a Thai problem, right? And the fourth issue is that democratization or lack thereof in Myanmar. Since the coup in January 2021 and the struggle, the ongoing struggle in Myanmar for democracy, and also against this the resurgence of military control in the country, and this is not seen as the same issue as in Thailand, because of course Myanmar doesn't have a monarchy, and Myanmar has, I would say, through much of the 1990s has been dominated by the more than 90% of FDI, foreign direct investment in Myanmar through the 90s was from the People's Republic of China. So it's been seen as sort of like the junta, military dictatorship, and you know, a almost hermit kingdom, but trading vastly with China. And then in the 2000s, when we start to see some forms of liberal reforms and democracy coming back in, but then in 2021, you have the resurgence of military forces coming in to kind of stop that democratization once again. And it's almost, in the Myanmar case, it's almost seen like the West versus China in a way, in that, okay, once they start to reform in the 2000s, you have like the lifting of sanctions from the EU, from the West, from the US, everyone starting to come into Myanmar more. And then all of a sudden, 2021, you have another coup, and then things continue to develop to the worst side, right? So anyway, these four issues had not been seen as being part of the same story before. The interesting thing about the Milk Tea Alliance that I'm talking about today is that it involves all four issues, and it kind of like presents the four issues as the same story. So how is that done, and how does it make sense, right? It will be what I will be talking about today. So first of all, there are two major concepts behind this story that I think is important to talk about. And that is, the first one is the fact that Southeast Asia and the South China Sea has, at least since the 19th century, it has always been a realm of influence. And it's always been a realm of influence of an external superpower, meaning that the South China Sea and Southeast Asia has always been under the influence of a superpower that is not from Southeast Asia. During the colonial era, I would say, at least since the British victory in the First Opium War and the opening up of treaty ports in South China, the South China Sea has been more or less the British realm of influence, and all the kingdoms and everyone involved in this area has to work with the imperial world order of free trade and extraterritoriality and all those things that come with the British concept of free trade, right? And you see this being challenged during the Second World War with Japan invading Southeast Asia, and its Japanese invasion of Southeast Asia at the end of 1941 was very much seen as a anti-Western imperialist move, and of course Japan sort of took control of most of Southeast Asia and the South China Sea for most of the Second World War, what we call the Pacific War. And then after the Second World War, you get into the Cold War period. And in the Cold War period is very clear that much of Southeast Asia, and definitely the South China Sea, was the realm of influence of the US. And it was only after the Cold War that the US, of course, started pulling out of Southeast Asia, the Philippines, South Vietnam, Thailand, and all these places. And the Southeast Asian countries around the South China Sea started gaining full independence, and also in the 90s democratizing. And the 1990s is around the same time that they started to have problems with, actual conflict materialized between the countries surrounding the South China Sea and the People's Republic of China. And I would say that, the People's Republic of China actually claim the entire South China Sea more or less in the 9-dash line since 1949, since the establishment of the People's Republic of China, because it claimed everything that was claimed by the Republic of China, right? And the Republic of China claimed the South China Sea in 1947. So in 1949, once the People's Republic is established, they had laid claim on the South China Sea since then. But it's only in the 1990s that you start seeing actual conflict problems, people bringing this up. And that, I say, is because in the 1990s, the countries around the South China Sea have all become independent and sovereign. And on top of that, many countries around the South China Sea had started to democratize. So there's more of there's something about democratization and being really independent, and I'll talk about it in the next slide. Another issue is that it's only in the 1990s that the People's Republic of China start to actually be capable of claiming their sovereignty over the South China Sea. It's only in the 1990s that they actually start going to do things in the Spratlys and the Paracel and in those areas. And so you only start to have this conflict coming up materialize in the 1990s. And so on the one hand, if you try to look at things from the PRC's point of view, it only makes sense, right? If the South China Sea and Southeast Asia will forever be just a realm of influence, and if the US has pulled out after the Cold War already, if someone in the world should be the hegemon over the South China Sea and Southeast Asia, it should be China, right? Like, logically speaking, the biggest superpower in the region, right, would be China. But at the same time, the question is, should the South China Sea and Southeast Asia continue to be just realms of influence? Because all these countries have gained independence already. These are sovereign nations. So should they put up with that? Does it have to be that way? And so I think this is a major part of the argument that has been going on, right? The next major issue that I want to talk about is this idea of democracy as political modernization. Of course, there's a lot of debate over this, but there have been some proposition that, you know, democratization is a form of political modernization. And of course, the biggest case against this idea is the open and reform policy of Deng Xiaoping that came out in 1978, and the idea that, you know, for modernization, so the People's Republic of China is going to modernize, it's going to open up, but it's not going to democratize. So China has long, since the late 70s, since Deng Xiaoping's time, has long been a case, you know, a case to contradict this idea that democracy is political modernization, and that you can't really fully modernize if you don't democratize, right? But what we have been seeing, I think, since the turn of the century, and especially in the 2010s, is that this issue is resurfacing, and we're seeing a lot of things going on that is related to this idea that democracy is political modernization. First of all, I think there's a general push towards democratization following this so-called economic miracle. If you look at the general history of East and Southeast Asia, and I think it's especially most clearly in the case of South Korea and Taiwan, what they call the economic miracle, the taking off of the economy of Taiwan and South Korea, actually did not take off during the democratic period. Economic takeoff in South Korea and Taiwan actually happened under dictatorship, under martial law to a certain degree. So I think in this case, what it shows is that democracy has nothing to do with economic taking off or economic miracle. You could have an economic miracle with martial law. You can have economic miracle with a military dictatorship. It has nothing to do with democracy. But what is interesting after that is that after that, there is a very strong pressure for these countries that have experienced economic miracles to democratize for several reasons. Both the reasons that there's a larger middle class, people have a better standard of living, they send their kids to study abroad, they go travel abroad, there's more foreign tourism and all that, and so they demand more from their rulers, from their society. But also, and perhaps more importantly, is that to continue to encourage economic growth after this economic miracle, you need to get into certain areas that don't work well under dictatorship, such as cultural industry, what they call creative economy, right? The entertainment business, for example, does not work well under the dictator, and also the tech industry. At the beginning, you might see, you know, under the dictatorship, the tech industry can still advance quite a bit, but after a while, the tech industry gets involved with this issue of information, and it gets in the way of controlling the media, controlling the information intake of people within the country. And so after a while, the tech industry could not be competitive in the global market under a dictatorship. And so in a way, the next step after the economic miracle appears to be democratization, so that the economy can continue to grow beyond that. And I think we see this very clearly in the examples of Taiwan and South Korea. And in a way, we're seeing it. I think that the same crisis, the same kind of crisis is happening in China right now. I would say if if you look at this model, China has attained this economic miracle in the 1990s and in the 2000s, but it is getting to a point where, you know, very clearly for the past decade, the growth of China has been slowing down significantly. And you also see in the past few years a major crackdown, a major attempt to control the tech industry and also the entertainment business, this creative economy that's going on in China as well. And I kind of see this as the same struggle that you see in other countries in East Asia that has attained the economic miracle before. And you know, if it goes the same way as South Korea and Taiwan, then something major is going to have to happen. I mean, that the dictator is going to have to reform or adapt in some ways to deal with this problem, that this crisis that is facing. Another side of this idea of democracy as political modernization is that democratization could be a legitimate protection against external superpower dominance. And I think this is very clear in smaller countries, especially, I think this is very much the case in Southeast Asia, is that you might have gained independence after the Second World War through the Cold War period. Many countries in Southeast Asia gained independence, but countries with dictators through the Cold War, it's very clear that the dictators are very susceptible to dominance of foreign superpowers. So we see very clearly, I mean, during the Cold War, you know, this is the communist bloc calls Thailand the US's largest unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Vietnam War, right? So there's a sense that these dictator rulers of Southeast Asia are very clearly pawns of the US, and in the same way, you know, in the Cold War is seen that the countries in the communist bloc in Southeast Asia are also very much under the influence of communist superpowers like the Soviet Union or the People's Republic of China, in the case of Cambodia, for example. And so in many ways, and of course, I work a lot on Thailand, and I see this very clearly in Thailand as well, is that once you have democratization, once you have the people electing their rulers, it becomes more difficult for superpowers to exercise complete influence, dominance over the political ruling party of that country. So in a way, I see Southeast Asia as not being fully decolonized, many parts of Southeast Asia not being fully decolonized until it actually democratizes. Because, and this also comes from the idea that if you can look at the Cold War era as the neo-imperialism, right? So until a country is democratized, it's very difficult to gain true independence from the dominant external superpowers. So this is another major concept behind my talk today. So now we come back to what has been going on. So if you remember from my earlier slide, when I said that the 4 issues that people haven't seen necessarily as being part of the same story, of the same major movement. So Taiwan independence, Hong Kong's liberty and democracy under the PRC, Thailand's failed democratization, and Myanmar's failed democratization. These 4 issues have not been seen to be the same story up until, I would say, Xi Jinping's presidency in China. quite a few things happen in the 20-teens that bring these four issues together, and people start seeing these four issues as the same story. So of course, it's people have noticed long before, since the 1990s, that that Myanmar was very heavily under Chinese influence, with China dominating the FDI during the time of Western sanctions. So Myanmar is not coming into this picture again until the 2021 Myanmar coup at the very end. So, but through the 20-teens, we see Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Thailand coming very much into the same orbit through Xi Jinping's presidency. So I start with 2014, which is Thailand's latest coup, in which the US and the EU, the West, expressed concern and that Thailand needs to return to democracy and all that. At the same time, China expressed very clearly that this is a domestic issue. China is not going to interfere in other countries' political affairs, and we are friends, and this is the Asian way and all that. So from the 2014 coup onwards, we see a very clear shift of the ruling government more towards China than and away from the US in many sense. And the prime minister that came out of this 2014 coup is the current prime minister. So in a way, there's a very clear continuation from the regime then to now. 2014 is also the year of the umbrella revolution in Hong Kong, which, people demanding for a greater level of democratization and rights and liberties and things going on, which ended with Beijing saying that that's not going to happen. I remember a very clear statement from Beijing that says, the right to an election is not human rights because you are not born with it. The rights to vote is something that is agreed upon between the government and the people. And in the case of China, we have not agreed upon those rights yet, and therefore there would be no democratization in Hong Kong. So that happened in the same year as the Thai coup. And then following that, in 2015, we have the Causeway books disappearance that took place, and this is quite alarming. So I mean, those of you who haven't been following this, basically you have the owner and the employees, five employees of the Causeway Bay Books company, which is based in Hong Kong, were disappeared, essentially abducted, to face charges in the mainland, and it has been unclear. There hasn't been any kind of straightforward explanation of the cause of it. There's only been speculations that it was related to Causeway Bay Books publications of the private life of Xi Jinping, and that was not allowed, and therefore people were charged. But this is, of course, that this is not the official statement from the PRC government. But these abductions, nonetheless, of course, show that there's an attempt from the mainland to intervene into Hong Kong, right? I mean, under the basic law, under the one country, two systems, what Causeway Bay Books did should not be considered illegal. And of course, even if it would be illegal, it should not be dealt with by abducting people back to be tried and sentenced in the mainland. And on top of that, it appeared that one of the 5 Causeway Bay Books disappearances took place in Thailand. So this is another issue in which we see Thailand being involved in this. 2015 is also the same year that more than 100 Uyghur refugees were illegal migrants were arrested in Thailand and sent back to China. to face prosecution, and this of course goes against every international agreement that Thailand has been involved in concerning sending refugees back to the country of origin where they had where they were trying to take refuge from. And the Thai government, which is of course back then it was a junta government, received much criticism for this, and it kind of suggested that Thailand was willing to go back on its words to the global community in order to please China. So this was the beginning of a lot of some criticism, calling critics starting to call Thailand Thai Guocheng, right, the Thailand province of China, right, because the junta seems to be doing everything to try to please China. And then you get to the 2019, and you have the anti-extradition movement for almost the entire year. And this issue of the extradition law that was brought up by Carrie Lam's administration is very interesting, because I think this extradition law proposal is one of the major issues that brings Taiwan independence and Hong Kong one country, two systems situation together. It merges, it makes it the same story, because the case that they brought up as the reason that they needed to introduce the extradition law in Hong Kong is a case of a murder that took place in Taiwan. And the idea is that the perpetrator then returns to Hong Kong, and because there's no extradition law between Hong Kong and China, then the perpetrator cannot be sent back to be tried in Taiwan. Even though, of course, Taiwan says we're not part of China, and we don't need an extradition law, and they could manage it in other ways. But in proposing this extradition law under these conditions, it's kind of killing two birds with one stone, right? It's both being able to intervene, and exercise influence in Hong Kong, Hong Kong's judicial system, which is not supposed to be under the one country, two system context, and also claiming Taiwan as part of the PRC, right? So in proposing this, suddenly the Hong Kong independence and the issues in the Taiwan independence and the issue in Hong Kong becomes linked, connected, right? And you have the major demonstrations and very violent crackdowns going on all through 2019. And in 2020, early in 2020, there was the Taiwan presidential elections. And if anyone's been following Taiwan politics, you would see that as in 2018, Tsai Ing-wen's ratings were very low, and popularity was very low. And there was even at one point suggestions that she might not run for a second term. But of course, I think many people would agree that what was going on in Hong Kong all through 2019 has sort of completely revived Tsai Ing-wen's popularity and her political status in Taiwan. And so in January 2020, with the elections in Taiwan, we see a landslide win by Tsai Ing-wen. That suggests that the Taiwanese electorate sees its fate as tied to Hong Kong. And in April 2020, you have the rise of the Milk Tea Alliance, which I will talk about in just a moment. And on the 30th of June 2020, you have the promulgation of the new national security law that came into effect on the 30th of June 2020. And this is a law that is it supposedly covers the entire world, right? So it covers cyberspace, it covers anyone who makes any comments that could be deemed a threat to national security in China could be brought to trial under this law. So this extraterritorial qualities of this law, I think, also contributed to the to bringing these four issues that might have not have been the same issues together. And then in 2021, you have the Myanmar coup and major demonstrations against the return of the military dictatorship in Myanmar, and people very much seeing the fight for democracy in Myanmar as being part of this general struggle for democracy in the Asia Pacific that has been ongoing. So now we get to the Milk Tea Alliance. And what exactly is the Milk Tea Alliance? It started out as something very silly, I would say, a middle school spat between netizens. So there's this boys love drama that is called Together. The English name is Together. And this boys love drama is a genre that has become extremely popular in the past decade. And it's not a gay drama. It's just a story of like very the relationship of two male protagonists, and you know, most of their fans are usually teenage girls who, you know, you get more for your money. You pay money to watch the drama, and you get, instead of getting just one very handsome male protagonist, you get two very handsome male protagonists, and so why not, right? But in recent years, boys love drama has been cracked down upon in China as well. This is, you know, seen as not to be supported by the Chinese government, and so this had allowed Thailand to Thai producers to get a major share in the market in China, and you still have a lot of boys love drama fans in China, so they switched to watch Thai boys love series instead. And this particular series, right, there's one of the protagonists is Bright, so this guy here in black, and he made a mistake. He posted some social media posts going back and forth with his girlfriend, and he suggested in his post, it kind of suggested that Taiwan and Hong Kong were not part of China. And this is some idea, like he said, like, my ideal girl is Taiwanese, and my girlfriend looks Taiwanese. That's why she's my ideal girl. And then you have some netizens coming out and say, you mean Chinese, because Taiwan is part of China. And so he was, and of course, after a while, there were this bombardment of hate messages because he was posting these silly things that sounded not right for PRC patriots, right? So he quickly deleted all those posts and apologized profusely, right? But the hate messages did not stop, and it continued to criticize him and to, you know, threaten him and everything. So the Thai netizens, right? He has fans in Thailand as well. So the Thai netizens come out, and you have a Twitter war between Thai netizen and PRC netizens, and so Thai netizens come out and said he did nothing wrong, and they're just trying to enrage the PRC fans by saying that, of course, Taiwan is not part of China. Of course, Hong Kong is not part of China. Of course, Hong Kong should be independent and all that, right? And so the Chinese citizens, the PRC netizens, are like hurling insults to the royal family, to the king, to the Thai prime minister, everything. And, you know, in Thailand, we had a lot of fun with that because we can't do the insults ourselves. We get put in jail. So this went on for more than 48 hours. And then soon after that, you have Hong Kong democracy activists and Taiwanese politicians coming out to thank the Thai netizens for standing up for their cause, right? And they started using the term Milk Tea Alliance because Taiwan has the bubble tea, right, as the national drink. And then Hong Kong, they drink milk tea as well. And of course, in Thailand, we have Thai iced tea, right? So the idea is that we all drink tea, but we put milk in it. And so we are all influenced by China, but we are not China. And we are cosmopolitan, and we help each other and all that. So the term Milk Tea Alliance emerged from that, right? And I think this would have disappeared into nothingness because it's just like netizens spat over boys love teen idol, right? How long can that last, right? But on the 14th of April, 2020, so this is like the second anniversary of that day, the PRC embassy to Bangkok issued a very long reprimanding statement in Thai, in Chinese, and in English, criticizing the Thai netizens and saying that you should not do this. This threatens the long-standing relationship between Thailand and China, and the Thai government has also has always stood by the one China policy, and China is also very good close friends with Her Royal Highness Princess Hachakri Sirinthorn. You should not do this, and this is really bad, and all that. And so that was responded by a hurl of insults from Thai netizens who all jumped into the Facebook page of the Chinese embassy and started criticizing them. So because the Chinese embassy took this seriously, right? So it became an official thing, right? So then after that, the pro-democracy movement in Thailand also took on this milk tea alliance idea, and this became part of the movement as well. And then later on, of course, in 2021, when the coup in Myanmar happened, and then there were protesters, pro-democracy protesters in Myanmar as well. They also took on this milk tea alliance idea, because guess what? They also drink milk tea in Myanmar, and they also view China as supporting the junta, supporting the military dictatorship. So this was how the Milk Tea Alliance took off. Oops. So the Milk Tea Alliance, it's an online kind of alliance. So people say, is it really anything? It's just people, saying nonsense online. They're not sending arms. They're not like, rising up. It's not a transnational army or anything. It's just like the younger generation, spewing nonsense online, right? But I think the importance of the Milk Tea Alliance is that it is a title. It provides a title for matters that could not have been voiced before, and this is very important in that there has long been a sense that the military dictatorship in Myanmar and in Thailand have gained support and legitimacy through ties with the CCP. And if you look at the relationship between the Thai military and China since the coup in 2014 up to the present, you can see very clearly that the amount of arms purchased, the frequency of leaders visiting, and the relationship has improved greatly compared to the democratized period. And similar things can be said with the Myanmar situation as well. You would see that in the earlier part of the protest, you have cases where the protesters were burning down Chinese factories or businesses owned by Chinese in Myanmar, because they saw this as being part of the Chinese influence that is keeping the Myanmar junta in power. And this issue that Taiwan and Hong Kong are not the same as the mainland. This is something that has been going on in the back of a lot of people's minds before, but now there's actually a word for it, right? And now there's a reason for it, that that we really don't think Taiwan is part of China. There's a questioning of why does Taiwan have to be Chinese Taipei in the Olympics, for example? And and there's issue, and you see like governments of Western countries, kind of like Western politicians, both British, Americans, and in the EU also coming in and having a say on the violations of human rights in Hong Kong, and the issue of the need for democracy in Hong Kong and all that. So this could also be voiced, I think, for the first time through the Milk Tea Alliance. In Thailand, especially, there has long been a feeling that the CCP government has a special relationship with the military dictatorship, and it also has a very close relationship with Her Royal Highness Princess Sirinthorn. And so it's a taboo because Princess Sirinthorn is one of the most popular members of the royal family. So if she likes China, then we shouldn't say bad things about China. But with the Milk Tea Alliance, it's the first time that people could actually voice their feelings, that they feel that China is becoming too influential in Thailand, and that both the CCP and the palace are the major obstacle towards the democratization in Thailand. So by invoking the Milk Tea Alliance, they don't have to directly criticize the royal family, which might get them put in jail. But it's kind of a roundabout way of questioning this very special relationship between the palace and the CCP. And in the end, I think the Milk Tea Alliance has allowed this sense that the People's Republic of China is a mutual obstacle towards democratization of the entire region, from Taiwan to Hong Kong to Thailand, and also in Myanmar. And this is something that has not been vocalized in such a way before. So I think this is why the Milk Tea Alliance is important. And interestingly, 2 years on, we are still talking about it, right? So where are things going from here? I'm not exactly sure. I think we can put that up for discussion. And yes, my 45 minutes is up. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wasana, for the very nice presentations. So now I wonder if Duncan, you are ready to offer some comments or pose questions. Duncan.
Sorry, yes, okay. Here we are, now you can see me again. Great, so thanks so much, Wasana, for giving such a comprehensive overview of this extremely complicated topic, which involves people in all sorts of different places, apparently focused on different issues, which mysteriously coalesce in this alliance that's rather hard to get our heads around. I mean, I could ask lots of things and say lots of things, but I'm also conscious we have a very large number of extremely knowledgeable people on this conversation who would probably like to ask questions, so I won't say too much. If we take a look at what's been going on over the past year or so, clearly this is now around the second anniversary. There seems to be some dispute as to whether it started on the 8th of April or the 14th of April, but it's one of those curious online controversies. But for sure, it's 2 years, right? It's been up and about for 2 years. Seems like the first year was more dramatic, and we had more active Thai protests, of course, in the second half of 2020, and we had then the ghastly military coup in Myanmar and the early months of the anti-coup protests, which saw a more prominent role for Generation Z, if you like, and the youth activists, but that role isn't quite so prominent as it has been in the first few months now. So you're getting people saying, well, has this peaked? Are there there are people doing these quantitative studies saying that actually there aren't as many people tweeting and using those hashtags as there were before. The thing was a little bit of a flash in the pan. We all got excited about it. The problem with something like this is, there's no organization, there aren't leaders, there's no office we can visit, there's nobody we can interview. All we can do is try to work out what's going on from all these online discourses. So the question, I'm working on this too, so I'm fascinated by the answer, and I hope the answer is not yes. But the question is, has something that really seemed to be extremely promising, because it brought together these apparently unrelated, but in some respects related issues of Hong Kong, Taiwan, Thailand, Myanmar, and others. Then there's the Indian Milk Tea Alliance and all kinds of other stuff that we haven't even got into, and sympathy for the Milk Tea Alliance in other parts of the world, even beyond Asia. has this all, one, been a little bit overblown from the beginning, or two, if it wasn't overblown from the beginning, it has now actually peaked and it hasn't really gone anywhere? So even though, you know, we'd like to believe that this is the beginning of something, are we getting overexcited and just allowing perhaps our own prejudices and desire to see something progressive to counterbalance the ghastly rise of authoritarianism, which we're now seeing all over the world, and the rolling back of all kinds of liberal and progressive agendas? You know, we're clutching at straws here. I've been trying to get money to study all this stuff, and no one's wanted to give it to me yet, possibly because they are having these flash in the pan questions in their minds. And then the other question related to all this, and this is the other thing I've been banging on about and trying to get money to study and talking about when I've had the chance to do so, is generational change. To what extent is the Milk Tea Alliance a manifestation of something that's going on generationally? Is Gen Z or Gen Z, depending which British or American accent or other accent we prefer, is this new generation of younger people, so Gen Z in Pew Research Center terms, and they're the people who try to define what generations are, is that, you know, people under 25, really, for the most part, do they have a fundamentally different understanding of the way that they consume information and their political and social role in the world than people of an older generation? Because here I am sitting taking notes on your presentation with my fountain pen, and some of us actually learned most of what we knew by reading it in printed books, but these people under 25 didn't learn most of what they knew from printed books. And that, you know, I could turn around the camera and you could see all the hundreds of books in my office. I have a lot of younger colleagues down the corridor who don't have any books in their offices at all, or to speak of, possibly because they couldn't be bothered to ship them around to places like Copenhagen, but possibly because they don't really own as many books. In other words, that there's been a shift in consumption of information and how people understand what's going on in the world. People who are digital natives, who access ideas and resources primarily online, do they have a different understanding of hierarchy and power, which is obviously so central to the way that politics is organized in a place like Thailand, where every time you utter a sentence, you're conscious of the way in which you're addressing people and framing your own power relationships to those around you. When you get a younger generation of people who are dismissive of those conventions and are using a different kind of language, and increasingly also appropriating English as an international language, which is not just an international language of business and education, but has, for something like the Milk Tea Alliance, become an international language of progressive ideas with which to resist authoritarian ideas. Are these people who are much more digitally fluent and English linguistically fluent, internationally minded, imagining themselves in a different way, partly as a result of this generational shift? Because if we believe that, then even if the Milk Tea Alliance has quote unquote peaked in its particular form, it doesn't really matter, because anybody now under 25, which is everybody who's going to be born in the future, isn't going to be in the same political, mental, and sociological mindset as everybody over 25. So ultimately, it's got to change. That these old men can hang on to power for a certain period of time, but finally, this generational shift, which is not just a classic generational shift of, you know, all those radicals in the 60s or the 70s, but it's a shift that's associated with a massive technological transformation and understanding, which undermines previous notions of power, hierarchy, knowledge, and control. So even if it's peaked and it's not happening now, it's just a matter of time. So that's the optimistic hypothesis to put against the pessimistic hypothesis that maybe this was all a bit of a flash in the pan. So where are you between these two hypotheses? And then let's have some questions from other people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I think I personally, like I said, I say the 14th of April is the 2-year anniversary, because it's a 2-year anniversary of the Facebook post of the Chinese embassy in Bangkok, right? Because I think this would not have been a big deal at all if it was just allowed to disappear, but because it was responded to by the PRC embassy in Bangkok, it becomes official. So in my point of view, I think it was completely blown out of proportion at the beginning by the PRC itself. So that's the first thing. But then I think what happened is then in mid 2020 was also when COVID-19 was becoming a major issue in the world. And then after that, you had lockdown, right? So soon after the emergence of the Milk Tea Alliance, I started to have to teach online. And in Thailand, we've been teaching online. This is semester number 5, so more than 2 years already. And of course, if we're teaching online and everything has to be online and there's this lockdown, right? So it's been difficult to have any form of demonstrations at all. And so that's one reason why perhaps this hasn't been, you haven't heard so much of it since. And I think COVID-19, of course, the same thing can be said about Hong Kong and Taiwan as well. I'm not exactly sure what's going on in Myanmar, but they say that the movement is still going on, but you don't hear enough from them. But so in a way, COVID-19 lockdown has dampened the movement a bit. But I think there's also something else that comes with COVID-19, and that is, in the case of Thailand at least, this vaccine diplomacy of China was a disaster in the insistence of the local government on buying so much Sinovac from China and insisting on using Sinovac as the main vaccine, even though the vast majority of the population wanted mRNA. And so that made the image of China among the populace even worse. And of course, members of the royal family have become connected with this vaccine fiasco. And so that, I think that has become the major thing working not in China's favor at all. So I think in a way, yes, you don't see the kind of feverish peak in the hashtags and Milk Tea Alliance going on online anymore because of the COVID lockdown. But at the same time, to answer your second question, which is related to the first question, is I think the importance of the Milk Tea Alliance is also that this is the connection and this is the cultural product of the 21st century. It started out with Boys Love series that people watch on the internet, right? And this is obviously a Gen Z kind of cultural product. And you see the difference here in which now the Thai younger generation and the PRC younger generations and the Taiwanese and the Hong Kong and across Southeast Asia, they're consuming the same cultural products together, and they are fans of the same superstars online, right? Of which I have never heard of if there hasn't been this Milk Tea Alliance thing out, right? And so this is a major thing, and I don't necessarily think that it's a generational thing. I think it's an internet thing. And the internet that came in and has become so powerful in the 21st century destroys the ability of authoritarian states to completely control the information intake of its people. China has been trying very hard to control the internet, but obviously it has not succeeded completely. And in the case of Thailand, we see this very clearly, is that the younger generations, they get their information online, and the government has no ability to control the kind of intake of information that they get at all. And I mean, I teach in a university, and now you see very clearly that unlike the 1970s, in the 2000s, in this century, the Thai universities do not have a monopoly on knowledge. And so the younger generations, so the state, the authoritarian state does not have the ability to control this. And so, of course, the younger generations who are digital natives, who are, natives to cyberspace, they get to these information faster than the older generation. But I think through time, I mean, people of my father's generation, so in his 70s, right? My father has 3 Facebook accounts, and he's like addicted to social media and all that. And so the older generations who can learn to like use Facebook and Twitter and send emails and things like that can also get into, get more information. So I think we're not just waiting for the next generation to grow up and for the older generation to die, because the older generation, a lot of them are also learning more and knowing more as well. So I think maybe the Milk Tea Alliance, this online alliance thing, maybe it's past its peak already. But what it represents in the idea that the pro-democracy activists across the region can have a network, can work together, can learn from each other, can use the internet to support its cause. This is only the beginning. This will go on, and yeah. So I think, and it would be more and more difficult for the authoritarian regimes to maintain their legitimacy, to control their people. And I think at the end of the day, the internet is going to bring us democratization and true decolonization in this region. So I definitely think Duncan should get money to study this, if not the Milk Tea Alliance. Thank you.
You're still a dyed-in-the-wool cyber optimist. There aren't too many of those people around anymore. That's impressive. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in Thailand, what I see in Thailand is very interesting. What I see in Thailand is that the younger generation, for example, in the latest handing out of diplomas in Thailand, the handing out of diplomas is very important, and it's always handed out by the royals. And the most popular royal to hand out diplomas is Princess Sirinthorn. The latest handing out of diplomas at Chiang Mai University by Princess Sirinthorn, only 43% of the graduates signed up to receive their diplomas from Princess Sirinthorn. And there's a major movement at Chulalongkorn University, which is her alma mater, for people not to sign up to receive the diplomas. So I think this is, and a lot of it is being done online, and a lot of it has to be done in a roundabout way, so as not to be put in jail for it. And this is done on the internet. And exactly what Duncan said, there's no office that we can visit. There's no one person that we can interview. And that's precisely what is good about it, right? Because then the government cannot lock down the office. The government cannot put the leader in jail because it's not there to be taken, right? And actually, I just saw something on Twitter today about the surge of criticism of the Chinese government concerning the lockdown, in the COVID lockdown in Shanghai, that has sort of leaked through Weibo, because they use the anti-American hashtag, but then they criticize the Chinese government instead, and it has been allowed to be on Weibo and like trending, number 1 on Weibo for like since midnight last night until 4 o'clock in the morning or something. And someone managed to capture all the screens and reproduce it on Twitter. So even in China, I mean, the internet is really going to drive the drive for democratization, I think.
Yes, I think we really have to kind of understand the creativity of the netizens in authoritarian regimes. They find their own ways. Well, we only have 5 minutes left, and we actually have one question in the chat. It is posed by Herman Alby from University of Turku in Finland. Maybe I just read the question. So his question is there any relationship between the multi-alliance key actors and the PRC's grassroots actors who also care about democratization?
I'm not, I haven't heard of that, basically because I think it's I haven't heard of that, but I would not be surprised if there's some contact. Actually, I've heard of some contacts between like sort of pro-democracy people in China with some of the activists in Thailand, but it's, I mean, ever since the national security law was passed in 2020, I think it's very dangerous for anyone who's within China's sovereignty to speak up. And I think like there used to be a lot of activities going on between the student activists in Thailand, the student activists in Hong Kong, but that has also kind of had to go behind the scenes as well because of the national security law. So I think, yeah, we haven't seen a lot of that, at least not in Thailand. Yes.
Well, thank you. Maybe I could just ask the last question, and that is, what is your next step, like in terms of research? Are you doing something in line of this multi-aligned stuff?
I'm writing my second book called The Crown and the Communists, and it's about the relationship between the Thai royal family and the CCP, especially Princess Sirinthorn. And the multi-alliance will figure prominently in it because basically it is the first major movement that allowed for the criticism of Princess Sirinthorn's very close relationship with the CCP and questioning whether or not that is really good for Thailand. So that the multi-alliance would definitely have a very special place in my book.
One last question is posed by John Dow. Would you like to kind of just speak up?
Sure. My apologies. It's about 3 or 4 in the morning where I am in the United States. I'm a professor at George Mason University and also director of Movement Engaged, which is a research hub that studies social movements. And I love your presentation, and the Movement Engaged is trying to wrap its head around the Milk Tea Alliance as well. And I've spent a long time studying Myanmar in particular. But I'm also wondering about the core of your thesis around technology and all this big tech in particular, and the way you're describing it as running up against authoritarianism, but at the same time, I guess, as Duncan was suggesting, a kind of cyber optimism that runs through your thesis. It seems that the alternative to the state surveillance model of trying to contain the netizens leaves us with an alternative that's largely described as it's what I see as an alternative form of authoritarianization in the form of surveillance capitalism. Facebook and a lot of these other big tech platforms based on the Silicon Valley model aren't exactly a force of democratization in Southeast Asia either. We do see other countries trying to incorporate principles of human rights into the development of some of their robotics and AI policies, national policies, like in Japan currently, it's Society 5.0 model, for instance. But they too find it very hard to carve out a third way for organizing the development of some of these emerging digital technologies outside of these two sort of hegemonic or forms of authoritarianization in the development of technology. And I'm wondering if you were to see surveillance capitalism as sort of the alternative current running through this, where does that leave the future of the development of the democracy you imagine that the netizens might be pushing for online?
Okay, I will answer this very quickly. I think I understand where you're coming from, and I could see the anxiety in the US and in parts of Europe as well. But I would like to say that the democracy that we're looking for in this part of the world is not even at that level yet. I mean, we're not even there yet, right? We don't have a free market, in that we don't even have free capitalism that the rich people win everything yet, right? We're still like under military dictatorship, or in the feudal period where it's all controlled by feudal lords and the royal family and all that, right? So I think I think we, at the moment, the platforms are not controlled by the dictators around here. And so it kind of allows us some space. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in this case, it's definitely generational, in that at least people in my country or around this area that I know of, is becoming more and more difficult for the ruling elite to find younger generations to work for them or to drive. I mean, they definitely use this information officers, this IO, agent of influence or whatever, to get on these platforms and support the dictatorship. But it's always found out by the kids, and it's always ridiculed, and it's a major source of ridicule in Thailand, and then I think in China as well. So I think at this point, at the very end, once we've gotten out of the feudal era in Thailand, then we'll move towards fighting this surveillance capitalism. In the meantime, I would be very thankful if people in the US can start fighting with them for us, on behalf of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wasana, for your very inspiring speech, and for helping us to understand the formation of this multi-alliance, and the quest for freedom is still ongoing. And we didn't pick today because of that reason, but somehow it coincided with a very significant day 2 years ago. And I also would like to thank Duncan for being our discussant, and our participants for posing the questions. This event has ended, and I will send the recording to all those who have registered, so you can listen to it again if you wish. Thank you very much. And again, Wasana, Happy New Year in Thailand. Thank you.